You know Russell Westbrook don't have the temperament to put up with that. Come on, y'all. That ain't who he is.
Stephen A. Smith didn't just criticize Russell Westbrook. He torched him on national TV. Fans are calling it one of the coldest takedowns in recent NBA memory. And honestly, they might be right. The way Stephen A. went at Russ wasn't just jokes or showbiz drama. It hinted at something way deeper. A possible fracture between Westbrook and the league itself. What's really going on behind the scenes might be a whole lot messier than anyone wants to admit. Let's break it down. The clowning heard across the NBA was brutal. Russell Westbrook, once the unstoppable triple-double machine, the man who played like every game was personal, is now sitting in basketball limbo. The same guy who used to bulldoze defenders and make arenas explode with energy, now can't even get a team to call him back. It's wild. And Stephen A., he didn't come with pity. He came swinging. No soft words, no respect for a legend talk. Just straight fire and public humiliation that left fans split between laughter and disbelief. What Stephen A. did wasn't just commentary. It was a statement. A shot at Westbrook's entire approach to the game. And maybe a reflection of how the NBA machine treats players once their shine fades.
Inexcusable behavior, that's what I saw. And I don't know why this isn't being talked about enough, to be quite honest with you.
Inexcusable. That's the word Stephen A. used, and he said it loud. To use that word about a former MVP on national TV, that's not just critique, that's a full-on public flogging. He didn't stop there either. Stephen A. claimed Westbrook's reckless playoff performance deserved a suspension, calling it appalling and inexcusable. That's beyond harsh. It's career-ending talk. And here's the cold truth. Fans and analysts have whispered for years that Russ's explosive style just doesn't fit the modern NBA anymore.
My parents always told me, you need to get a good education. And I was actually thinking about going to Stanford for academics out of high school.
But Stephen A. took that quiet chatter and blasted it through the loudest mic in sports. Then he dropped the chilling prediction that sent shockwaves. If Westbrook doesn't accept a smaller role, he might be out of the league completely next year. From MVP to unemployed, from highlight reels to headlines of humiliation, how did one of basketball's most electrifying players end up here? And more importantly, did the NBA turn its back on Russ, or did Russ refuse to evolve?
Russell Westbrook can't change. He's not going to be a good defender. He hasn't been the last 14 years, and that's not changing.
So how did we end up here? How did that Russell Westbrook, the man who turned triple doubles into a lifestyle, who fought his way into Hall of Fame status?
Honestly, I was, me and my wife was at teacher parent conference for my son. And the teacher told me, she's like, Noah, he's so proud of his last name. He writes it everywhere. He writes it on everything. He tells everybody, he walks around and says, I'm Westbrook, that's his last name. And I kind of sat there in shock, and it hit me like, damn, like I can no longer allow people, for example, Westbrook to me is now shaming, like it's shaming my name, it's my legacy for my kids.
Through pure energy and defiance, become the butt of Stephen A.'s jokes? It doesn't even sound real. To understand it, you've got to rewind, because Russ wasn't supposed to fall like this. See, Russell wasn't born into basketball royalty. He was the kid who almost went to Stanford. Yeah, for academics. Hoop dreams weren't even plan A. But once he stepped on that court,
LeBron is guilty of that. Remember when Russell Westbrook was in Houston? and they were in the playoffs against the Lakers, and LeBron James and the Lakers was talking about he with us when he had the ball.
Everything changed. It became personal. And for a long time, that fire carried him higher than anyone ever expected. His teammates respected him. His rivals feared him. Even legends admired him. James Harden once said that Westbrook's MVP season might have been the greatest single season we've ever seen. Others compared his drive to Michael Jordan's obsession and his killer instinct to Kobe Bryant's intensity. That's the kind of company Russ kept. But here's where the tragedy kicks in. The same wild, relentless energy that made him iconic is now what's destroying him. As the league evolved, Russ refused to change. Teams started defending him differently, or not at all. Opponents literally backed off and begged him to shoot. Sports host Colin Cowherd even said, Westbrook became the least guarded guard in the league. Think about that humiliation. When defenses are basically saying, we don't respect your jumper, that's basketball exile, especially for a former MVP. Stephen A. saw it, and he didn't hold back. He didn't just question Russ's shooting. He went at his stubbornness, his pride, his refusal to adapt to the game's new rules. And that's what made his words sting so much. This wasn't just about bricks or turnovers. It was about identity.
This is only about your game. You have not been a good shooter. And a person who has not been a good shooter.
About an NBA superstar who refused to evolve while the league moved on without him. And the fallout got ugly. Every missed jumper turned into a meme. Every turnover became headline material. The Westbrook chants hit so hard that his own family stopped showing up to games. Imagine that. Your kids can't even sit in the stands because the mockery's too loud. Russ went from being basketball storm to becoming its cautionary tale.
Can no longer allow people, for example, Westbrook to me is now shaming, like it's shaming my name, it's my legacy for my kids.
And everyone, including Stephen A., is still talking about it. That wasn't just heckling. That was psychological warfare, the kind that breaks a player from the inside out. And when Westbrook finally opened up about how much those chants and headlines got to him, the world saw the human cost of a superstar's fall. Imagine sitting at home.
The problem with Russ on the defensive end is his mental mistakes. He doesn't pay attention off the ball. He gambles way too much. He goes for steals constantly.
Already feeling the weight of every missed shot. And then flipping on ESPN just to hear Stephen A. Smith saying, you might not even have a job next season. That's not commentary. That's a public execution in real time. And the wildest part, it worked. Because here we are, still talking about it. But hold on. Here comes the bombshell. Stephen A. didn't stop at Russ. He came for LeBron James too. Yeah, he accused LeBron of helping fuel the disrespect toward Westbrook, even throwing back to those Houston playoff days when LeBron's Lakers allegedly mocked Russ as a liability. That's some backdoor betrayal right there. Think about it. One of the greatest players ever, a man who vouched for Westbrook joining the Lakers, reportedly laughing behind the scenes. Then, when things went south, trade rumors about swapping him for Kyrie Irving started flying all off-season. That's not just business, that's cold. So now, the question isn't only does Westbrook still deserve a spot, it's did the entire NBA system, from stars to analysts to fans, build him up just to tear him down when the story stops selling? And here's where it gets dark. Stephen A's hint about Russ being jobless isn't just harsh talk, it's poetic cruelty. The man who gave everything to the game, who once electrified arenas and defied physics, is now being mocked, doubted, and left standing on the edge of irrelevance. The real question isn't did Westbrook fail the league? It's did the league fail Westbrook? Because let's remember, Russ was never supposed to be the punchline. When he entered the NBA, he wasn't hyped like LeBron, wasn't crowned the next Jordan, and nobody handed him a franchise. He was raw, undersized for a shooting guard, too wild for a point guard, and constantly doubted. But what he did have was something no one could teach: unshakable belief. That belief became his brand. Coaches at UCLA called him reckless. History called him relentless. 4 seasons averaging a triple-double. That's not just impressive. That's rewriting basketball history.
Inexcusable behavior, that's what I saw. And I don't know why this isn't being talked about enough, to be quite honest with you.
Legends like Oscar Robertson had to sit back and watch the unthinkable become reality. Russ didn't just play basketball, he embodied defiance. Every dunk, every scream, every chest pound screamed one thing: I'm built different. But that's where the cruel irony hits hardest. The same stubbornness that lifted him to greatness is now what analysts say is destroying him. Stephen A hammered that point over and over again. Russ refuses to change. And even Magic Johnson joined that conversation, saying, "You've got to own your stuff. You can't keep blaming the fans, the media, or your teammates." And that's where Russ struggles, because the NBA of 2025 is all about efficiency, spacing, and three-pointers.
She's like, Noah, he's so proud of his last name. He writes it everywhere. He writes it on everything. He tells everybody, he walks around and says, I'm Westbrook, that's his last name. And I kind of sat there in shock, and it hit me like, damn, like I can no longer allow people, for example, Westbrook to me is now shaming, like it's shaming my name, it's my legacy for my kids.
Meanwhile, Russ has never been a sniper, and Stephen A didn't let that slide for a second. He turned that flaw into a national talking point. It's crazy how fast admiration turns into mockery. One day, you're the storm. The next, you're the cautionary tale. The question now is, can Russell Westbrook rewrite the ending? Or has the league already written him off for good?
Russell Westbrook can't change. He's not going to be a good defender. He hasn't been the last 14 years, and that's not changing.
That's not opinion. That's cold, hard truth. In today's NBA, where every stat is tracked, measured, and dissected, Russell Westbrook's inefficiency became unforgivable. Back in his prime, he could blow past defenders so fast the missed jumpers didn't matter. But now, every brick lands heavier. Every miss feels like a turnover, like a reminder that time catches everyone eventually. And here's where the story gets deeper, because this isn't just about shooting percentages. It's about perception. When defenders literally back away from you on the court, it's not strategy, it's humiliation. Imagine being a future Hall of Famer and seeing opponents give you 10 feet of space, waving you off like you're irrelevant. That's not just disrespect, that's basketball exile. And Russ felt that sting every single night. That's why his emotions spilled out in those raw press conferences. When he addressed the Westbrook chants, it wasn't just frustration, it was heartbreak. He admitted that the nickname had gone too far, that it wasn't just about him anymore. It was hurting his family. Even his kids couldn't escape it. Imagine your children hearing thousands of people mocking their father's name every night. That's not just cruel, that's soul crushing. But instead of softening, instead of showing even a hint of empathy, Stephen A. doubled down. He called Westbrook's antics appalling, blasted his playoff performances as failures, and openly mocked the idea that Russ could ever reinvent himself as a role player. For Stephen A., this wasn't about hate, it was about truth-telling. He wanted to expose what he saw as the brutal reality, that the game had passed Westbrook by. And if Russ didn't change, he wouldn't just fade away, he'd be erased. Still, not everyone agreed. NBA legends, people who played with and against Russ, rushed to defend him. Icons like Tracy McGrady and Chauncey Billups called him a once-in-a-generation competitor. Former teammates from OKC, Houston, and Washington vouched for him too, calling him one of the best locker room leaders they'd ever seen. Some even said his fire reminded them of Michael Jordan. That's huge praise. So why the massive disconnect? Why do players still ride for Russ while analysts drag him through the mud? Simple. Perspective. Teammates see the grind, the leadership, the endless work behind closed doors. Analysts see the turnovers, the bricks, and the box score. And fans, they see memes. They see YouTube compilations of missed layups looping endlessly, shaping the entire perception of a man who once carried franchises on his back.
He can't prove this season that he could take a lesser role. What are they saying he's going to be next year, Stephen A? They saying he possibly could actually be without a job.
And that's where Stephen A's influence comes in. Whether you agree with him or not, his voice moves mountains. When he goes on live TV and says Westbrook might be out of a job next season, that's not just analysis, that's shaping reality. That's writing the obituary of a player's career while he's still fighting to stay relevant. Because in the NBA, perception isn't just commentary, it's prophecy. But just when you think it couldn't get any more chaotic, boom, here's the explosive twist. Stephen A. didn't just clown Russ, he dragged LeBron James into it. He accused LeBron of being part of the problem. That's next level betrayal. We're talking about the same LeBron who vouched for Russ to join the Lakers, the same superstar who publicly defended him on social media. Yet, behind the scenes, reports hinted that Bron had lost faith, even mocked him during the playoff run. Then came the rumors.
Once it starts to affect my family, my wife, even today, my mom said something about it today, and it affects them even going to games. Like I don't even want to bring my kids to the game because I don't want them to hear people calling their dad nicknames and out of their names for no reason.
The Kyrie Irving trade whispers that filled the summer. Suddenly, it felt like Russ was disposable, even to the king himself. That's not just business, that's betrayal with a smile. So let's call it what it is. This isn't just a story about Westbrook being a free agent. It's about the power politics of the NBA. It's about how superstars protect their legacies at the expense of others. How the media magnifies flaws until a player's whole identity gets rewritten in real time. And most of all, it's about what happens when a man who built his entire legacy on defiance finally runs out of people willing to defend him. Because in this league, when you stop fitting the narrative, they don't just move on, they erase you. Because here's the gut punch. Stephen A's prediction came true. Russell Westbrook is still a free agent. No deal, no roster, no comeback story in sight. Teams have moved on. The game has evolved without him. And for all the passion, the history, the sweat, and blood he's poured into this league, the NBA has quietly said, we're done. So when Stephen A. clowns him on live TV, it's not just entertainment. It's the sound of a door slamming shut. It's the league's cold way of saying to one of its fiercest competitors, thank you for your service, but we don't need you anymore. And that's what makes this whole story hurt so much. Because Russell Westbrook isn't just another player. He's a symbol, a cautionary tale for every star who thinks their athleticism will last forever, for every icon who believes their willpower alone can fight the clock. Stephen A. didn't just roast Russ. He exposed the brutal truth about how this league treats its own heroes. Loyalty, conditional. Greatness, temporary. Once the game decides you're finished, it doesn't matter who you were. You can be mocked, dismissed, and forgotten overnight. That's the cold reality. Respect turns into ridicule before you even realize it's happening. The humiliation of being unsigned isn't just about money or contracts. It's about symbolism. When a former MVP sits idle during free agency, the message couldn't be louder. You're no longer wanted. And that's what cuts the deepest for Russ. Because for over a decade, teams didn't just want him, they needed him. He was the storm, the engine, the heartbeat that dragged franchises back to relevance. Oklahoma City, Houston, Washington, even the Lakers. Every single team bet on his fire, and for a while, he delivered. But now, with every day that passes and no call coming, Westbrook's career feels less like a chapter in progress and more like a book slowly closing, page by page, in front of the world. And Stephen A., he knew it. He weaponized it. On live TV, he didn't just critique Russ's jump shot or turnovers. He went for the soul of the man's career. Inexcusable. That's the word he used. Sharp and unforgiving. And that word isn't about missed buckets or lazy defense. It's about accountability. It's Stephen A. saying, Russ crossed the line where effort alone can't protect you anymore. And when he drops that word on NBA Countdown, it doesn't just echo through the studio. It ripples across every debate show, every podcast, every highlight reel. It becomes the narrative. But here's where the hypocrisy kicks in. Because while Stephen A. paints Westbrook as appalling, people inside the game tell a very different story. Off the court, teammates describe Russ as one of the most loyal, hardest working, and inspirational leaders they've ever had. Young players have shared how he pushed them to rise up, telling them to own their greatness. Some said his locker room speeches sounded more like sermons than pep talks. That's the real Russ, the mentor, the motivator, the man who never let teammates quit. But that's not what sells, right? ESPN doesn't air his words of encouragement. They replay his air balls. Social media doesn't clip his leadership moments. They loop his turnovers on TikTok for laughs. What goes viral isn't sacrifice or heart. It's humiliation. And that's the most painful part of all. Russ knows it. He said it himself. It hit his family harder than it hit him. His wife, Nina, opened up about the harassment they've endured, from online trolls to fans crossing the line in real life. And Russ, he finally broke down when he realized his own son, The kid who once wore Westbrook proudly now had to hear people turning that name into a punchline. That's not just cruel, that's tragic. Because behind the stats, behind the headlines, there's still a man who gave everything to this game. And now he's being reduced to memes, sound bites, and public shame. The league that once celebrated his defiance is now punishing him for it. So maybe Stephen A. didn't just expose Westbrook's flaws. Maybe he exposed something far bigger. The NBA's obsession with perfection, the media's thirst for scandal, and the painful truth that in this game, even legends can be forgotten before the final buzzer ever sounds. That's not sports banter anymore. That's personal humiliation. This isn't just about basketball. This is a man's family life being dragged through the mud. And if you thought Stephen A. might tread carefully in that minefield, think again. He doubled down. He called out Westbrook as a man who simply can't change, painting him as stubborn to the core, a soul trapped in his own pride. This is where the so-called analysis turned brutal, because Stephen A. wasn't just clowning Westbrook's slump. He was burying his career on live television. That's the terrifying power of narrative. One voice, one viral clip, and suddenly millions start seeing you not as a player in decline, but as done. To feel the full weight of this, you've got to remember who Russell Westbrook was. For a stretch, this man wasn't just a superstar. He was the show. James Harden himself said Westbrook's MVP season might have been the greatest single season performance we've ever seen. Tracy McGrady once admitted he'd never seen anyone leave more of themselves on the court every single night. Damian Lillard praised him as the ultimate competitor. A man who played like the clock was always about to expire. Even his fiercest rivals respected him. They didn't just play against Russ, they survived him. Opponents compared his intensity to Michael Jordan's ruthless drive, his fire to Kobe Bryant's obsession, and his energy to the Energizer Bunny of the NBA. Every night, Russ played like he was proving something to the universe itself. But fast forward to now, and those same traits that made him great have become the very things that haunt him. His refusal to compromise, his raw aggression, his unshakable belief in himself. All the qualities that built his legend have turned into liabilities. Defenses don't fear him anymore. Coaches don't build around him. Front offices don't want the drama. Colin Cowherd said it cold. Westbrook is the least guarded guard in the NBA. That's brutal. Teams literally begged him to shoot. That's not just strategy, that's humiliation. That's an insult no competitor of his caliber should ever have to swallow. And the worst part? That humiliation didn't stay on the court, it went viral. Social media turned his struggles into entertainment. Memes mocking his jump shots, threads ridiculing his triple doubles as stat padding, and lowlight reels that spread faster than his actual highlights ever did. In this new era where perception is reality, Westbrook wasn't just losing games, he was losing the narrative war. And leading that charge, Stephen A. Smith, the loudest general in the battle for public opinion. When he called Russ's playoff behavior appalling, it wasn't just analysis, it was branding. When he said Russ can't change, he wasn't describing a game flaw, He was stamping an identity on a man. That's not sports talk anymore. That's career-defining power. And here's the cruel twist. Fans loved it. Outrage sells, laughter trends, and nothing goes viral faster than watching a once great player turned into a punchline. People weren't debating Russ anymore. They were mocking him. His downfall became content. His pain became clicks. Meanwhile, Westbrook was left fighting for something deeper than a roster spot. He was fighting for his dignity, fighting for his family's respect, fighting against a nickname, Westbrook, that reduced a Hall of Fame resume into a meme, fighting against a narrative so powerful that even his greatness couldn't silence it. And here's where the hypocrisy hits full force. Because while the NBA media mocked him, his peers, the people who actually shared the floor with him, never stopped defending him. Bradley Beal vouched for his leadership. Young players called him a role model. Legends praised his heart, his intensity, his loyalty. The same man being ridiculed on ESPN was still respected in locker rooms across the league. But what did the front offices do? Nothing. No calls, no contracts, just silence. And that silence speaks louder than any headline. It tells you everything about today's NBA. That respect in the locker room doesn't guarantee survival on the payroll. That a man can give his soul to the game, and the minute he stops fitting the algorithm, the system moves on without a second thought. And that's why Stephen A's words cut so deep, because whether he admits it or not, he's not just reporting on Westbrook's downfall, he's building it. His takes echo in boardrooms. His headlines become justification for GMs to hesitate. And when he says Russ might not have a job next season, that soundbite turns into prophecy. So here's the bigger, darker question. Did Russell Westbrook really fail? Or was he failed by a league that chews up its stars, turns them into memes, and spits them out the second they don't fit the highlight reel? Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about what happens when a man gives everything to the game and the game gives nothing back. Make no mistake, this isn't just about one man anymore. This is about a pattern, a dark cycle inside the NBA that keeps repeating itself. A pattern where the league celebrates its stars like gods until they become inconvenient. Then, just as fast, those same heroes get mocked, dragged, and left to fade into irrelevance. And now, Russell Westbrook, once the pulse, the heartbeat of the NBA, has become the league's most high-profile casualty. From MVP to meme, that's the brutal reality. The NBA's cold goodbye has arrived, and Russell Westbrook, one of the most electrifying players of his generation, is still a free agent. No team, no contract, no comeback. That's not a rumor. That's not speculation. That's cold, factual truth. Training camps are rolling, rosters are being finalized, and his name isn't anywhere on them. Think about the symbolism of that. For over a decade, Russ was the walking embodiment of intensity. Coaches called him a motor that never stopped running. Players compared him to Jordan and Kobe. Fans worshipped his ferocity, the way he attacked every possession like it might be his last. And now, the phone doesn't ring. The arenas that once screamed his name scroll past him like he's invisible. His MVPs, his triple doubles, his records, buried under memes, jokes, and clips of missed jumpers looping endlessly online. And here's the chilling part. Stephen A. saw it coming. He warned everyone years ago. If Russ can't take a lesser role, he might be out of the league. Back then, it sounded harsh. Now, it sounds prophetic. Those 4 words, without a job, echo louder than any stat line he ever put up. Because here we are, watching that prophecy unfold right in front of our eyes. Sure, Stephen A. clowned him. He mocked him. But under all the laughter was a truth so raw, it hurts. The game moved on, and the league didn't even look back. The NBA doesn't care about loyalty. It doesn't care about legacy. It doesn't care that Westbrook bled for every point, every rebound, every assist. Because if you can't fit today's mold, if you can't shoot threes, stretch the floor, or adapt to the algorithm, you're gone. That's the story the networks won't tell, but it's the one Russ is living right now. Because despite the decline, despite the headlines, Russell Westbrook is not washed. He still brings that fire, that motor most 25-year-olds can't match. He still plays like every possession matters. He still loves the game with every fiber of his being. But in the cold business calculus of 2025 basketball, passion isn't enough. Analyst Colin Cowherd said it straight. Westbrook is the least guarded guard in the NBA. Let that sink in. Teams literally step back, hands on their hips, daring him to shoot. That's not just defensive strategy. That's humiliation dressed as analytics. And when defenses laugh, front offices follow. Because perception is currency. And Westbrook's stock has crashed. But the hypocrisy? It's blinding. Ask the players. They'll tell you the truth. Damian Lillard said he's never seen someone play harder. Kobe Bryant once praised Westbrook's fire as unmatched. Patrick Beverley, who once feuded with Russ publicly, later admitted he respected his relentless drive. Even Bradley Beal called him one of the best teammates he's ever had. So how does the same man who earned that kind of respect get this kind of rejection? The answer cuts deep. Because in today's NBA, respect in the locker room doesn't equal survival in the league. You can be loved as a man and still discarded as a player. Front offices can smile at your legacy and still move on without a call. And that's where the story turns tragic. Because what the NBA is really saying to Westbrook is this: we respect you, but not enough to keep you. It's a thank you card disguised as a rejection letter. A polite, we've moved on, from the same league that once sold his highlights on every screen. Russ knows it too. That's why his words about his family hit so hard. This isn't just about contracts anymore. This is about a man watching the game he gave his life to turn his name into a joke. Watching his son hear Westbrook in the stands, when that name once meant pride and power. That's not just career decline. That's legacy turned into collateral damage. And through it all, Stephen A. doesn't flinch. He says what no one else on TV dares to say, that Russ is too stubborn to adapt, that his decision-making has aged worse than his athleticism, and that his unwillingness to evolve has left him stranded in a league that rewards reinvention. And here's the coldest truth. He's right. The NBA doesn't reward nostalgia. It rewards evolution. Just look around. LeBron James transformed from a slasher into a playmaking three-point threat. Vince Carter extended his career by reinventing himself as a steady veteran sniper. Even Carmelo Anthony, once exiled from the league, clawed his way back into relevance by embracing a bench role. That's the formula: adapt or disappear. And Russ, for all his fire and pride, refused to bend. He stayed defiant, stayed loyal to his way, and the game moved on without him. So maybe Stephen A wasn't just clowning. Maybe he was holding up a mirror to the NBA itself. Because what we're seeing with Russell Westbrook isn't just one man's downfall. It's a reflection of how the league treats its warriors once their shine starts to fade. The question isn't just what happened to Russ. The real question is, how many more legends will have to learn the same brutal lesson before the NBA admits it's turned greatness into a disposable product? Russell Westbrook, the man who never bent, never compromised, never surrendered, is now paying the ultimate price. For years, that defiance made him legendary, but now it's what's leaving him stranded. And here's the haunting part. For all the clowning, for all the hot takes and late night mockery, Russ's story is so much bigger than Russ himself. It's a reflection of how the NBA treats its aging warriors, with applause one day and apathy the next. One moment, you're the face of the league, MVP, record breaker, cultural icon. The next, you're a meme. One day, you're celebrated as unstoppable. And the next, your name trends on social media not for your highlights, but for your failures. That's how fast the NBA machine moves. And Stephen A. Smith, he's just the megaphone. He says on live TV what the league whispers in private. Once you're no longer useful, you're disposable. So where does that leave Russ? In limbo, in exile, waiting for a phone call that might never come, watching teams announce new signings while his phone stays silent, seeing his name trend online, not for buzzer beaters, but for brick compilations and viral jokes. He's not just fighting for a contract anymore. He's fighting for dignity. And maybe that's the cruelest irony of all. Because for over a decade, Russell Westbrook was defiance personified. He built his identity around never backing down, never changing for anyone, never letting the critics define him. But now, for the first time, the game itself has spoken, and it's saying, you're done. And no matter how hard he fights it, no matter how much he believes he's still got something left, no matter how many legends still vouch for him, the truth is brutal. The league has moved on. Stephen A. might have clowned him for still being unsigned, but that wasn't just a joke. That was the obituary being read live on air. Because unless something changes, unless Russ finally does what he spent his whole career avoiding, evolving, his NBA story will end not with cheers, not with banners, not even with respect, but with ridicule. And that's the real heartbreak here, because Russell Westbrook deserved better than this cold fade out. He gave everything, his heart, his pride, his identity. But the NBA doesn't deal in sentimentality. It deals in survival. Once you stop fitting the formula, it doesn't matter what you've done. It only matters what you can do right now. And in the ruthless survival game of today's NBA, Russell Westbrook, the man who once defied gravity and expectations, has been left behind. If you enjoyed watching this story, click one of the videos on your screen right now. Because trust me, the truth behind these NBA stories only gets wilder.